First, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Curtis Loftis, Jr. Mr. Loftis was elected Treasurer of the great state of South Carolina in November of last year. In this role, Mr. Loftis is responsible for the investment, cash management, and safekeeping of the state's general and restricted funds, and also the assets of the South Carolina retirement systems. He also serves as the Vice Chairman of our State Budget and Control Board, which handles the state procurement programs, state insurance, the Budget Office, State Auditor's Office, State Human Resources Office, the General Service Office, the Budget Office, and the State Technology Office. Prior to running for office, Mr. Loftis owned and operated a very successful small business in West Columbia. Welcome, Mr. Loftis. I'd also like to welcome at the same time our second witness, Mr. Brian George. He's the Deputy Director of the Office of Cost, Pricing, and Finance, Defense Procurement and Acquisition Policy, where he's the lead for reinvigorating cost and pricing skills within the Defense Department and advises the Director on issues relating to contract cost, pricing, and finance. He's accompanied by Mr. David McDermott, the Director of Standards Compliance, Defense Finance, and Accounting Service. Mr. McDermott is responsible for developing finance and accounting goals and standards and analyzing operational results. Mr. George is going to provide testimony on behalf of the Defense Department and answer questions related to those issues. Mr. McDermott will not be testifying, but is also available to answer questions as well, especially regarding the defense accounting system. Gentlemen, thank you. We're going to go ahead and recognize Mr. Loftis for his comments.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm honored to be here today. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm very honored to be here today. I urge the repeal of the federal 3% withholding provision. Section 511 imposes an arduous and costly mandate. It will unfairly penalize state and local governments and businesses that run honest, taxpaying companies. The impact and unintended consequences of this requirement on both government and private enterprise are serious. Expensive implementation costs come during a time of a weak financial recovery. Compliance with this requirement will prove oppressive to private industries and will definitely cost us jobs. Of course, the taxpayer will have to pay the burden of this plan. I'm the Treasurer of South Carolina, but I'm also a small businessman. I have 3 dozen employees in Columbia, so I have to take these issues seriously. I'd like to share with you how I see the impact of this law. First, let's look at the negative impacts on the state and local governments. The provision imposes administrative costs and recording requirements for implementation and maintenance of the vendor tax withholding and the actual payment of the tax on behalf of the vendors to the IRS. It will be an administrative nightmare. There will be major modifications to accounting systems and other administrative processes. The manpower and dollar cost of the provisions for the local and state government access across the country will be astronomical. Coupled with administrative costs, many believe the vendors will increase their prices to government in order to compensate for this penalty tax. Again, as a result, the taxpayers will pay more. The withholding law will negatively affect government's budgets at the time that every dollar counts. Smaller units of governments may not be able to sustain the burden of administering this program. Federal tax enforcement is the function of the IRS and the federal government, not of the state and local governments. The 3% withholding penalizes all tax-compliant businesses. It forces them to provide the federal government with an interest-free loan by requiring advance payment on taxes, which may not even be due at the end of the year. The withholding is based on gross revenues from contract payments, and they have no relationship to taxable income. Firms with tight profit margins will lose funds necessary for vital operations. Cash flow may be damaged to the point that some companies withdraw from doing business with the government altogether. Business expansion could be halted or deferred. Additional cash flow constraints can push some companies out of business altogether. I'm particularly concerned about what Section 511 does to my home state. Small business is essential to the well-being of South Carolina. In 2008, there were 364,000 small businesses in South Carolina, and they account for 50% of the private sector jobs. Small firms made up 97% of South Carolina employers. Small business is the engine that drives South Carolina's economy. The success of small business sector is critical to our economic recovery. The withholding requirement will reduce the amount of capital available for payroll, new business investment, and daily expenses. South Carolina's unemployment rate in April placed us at the 9th highest in the country. Mr. Chairman, we need jobs, not more regulation. We need capital, not more taxes. There's a saying, an error we refuse to correct has many lives. I believe the negative consequences of this mandate will snowball, so I strongly urge the members of this committee and the House to take action as quickly as possible to repeal Section 511. And lastly, I'd like to commend Representative Herger for his work on H.R. 674. And also, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give a special thank you to my fellow South Carolinian for allowing me to come and speak to you on behalf of the state and local governments in South Carolina.